Hello, everyone. Welcome back to our podcast. We're at Highly Miami Senior High School. My name is Michael Crago.
My name is Elizabeth Alvarez, and I'm a senior.
Hello, my name is Mia Concepcion, and I'm also a senior here at Highly Miami Senior High.
But I'm a junior here at HML.
And we're here back with our special guest, Dalton.
Nice to be back. Thanks for having me.
All right, just to recap what we talked about before, we talked about underground rain barrels and rain barrels and how they can conserve water for the better. But now for our new topic, we'll be talking about septic tanks versus sewer systems. Go, Mauricio.
All right, now, Dalton, I know you did discuss rain barrels, and I guess septic tanks are kind of like rain barrels, but maybe underground and not collecting those water. But it's kind of similar, right? You'd say. So the thing is, we do have a bit of experience with septic tanks and the sewer systems. In fact, the reason Radis brought us onto this podcast here today is because me and Mia here, we participated in this environmental debate, and I argued on one of the topics being whether Miami-Dade citizens, since apparently Miami-Dade is trying to convert all these houses to sewer systems by 2040 or whatever, and the discussion was what the debate was whether or not these sort of should it be mandatory for these houses to switch over sewer or not, and so for that, and I was assigned to argue towards the septic systems and whatnot. So my questions will be of that sort of argumentative nature. Okay. Mm-hmm. And Ellie here is going to talk about a project she did as well.
Yeah, okay. So last year I did this project with the legal system at the school, Highly Miami Lakes. And it was basically like you identify a problem in your community and then you try to solve or get an issue with it. You contact your local representatives. You try to get that problem, like the solution that you made up, basically passed as a bill. And the problem that we chose was the sewage system in Florida and how badly it's affecting our environment and things that it's causing in the environment, like red tide, the destruction of our ecosystems, basically. So I have some, I guess, like background information on sewage systems. But yeah, I'm gonna ask the first one. So a lot of the sewage systems in Florida are relatively really old, and they were all built in like 1950s, but they were usually only meant to sustain or be built for like 20, 30 years, and then they were meant to like build or renovate them again after, but they never did. So a lot of them are broken down. So if we were to, I guess, change into sewage systems, do you know of any way we can kind of improve them, or if there's any information you know about that where we can like?
So actually, I was able to witness firsthand some installation of some sewer pipes that they're putting in. We recently did a pollinator garden and some outreach with Arcola Lakes, area, which is in Little Haiti area of Miami. They also call it like a Little River section of Miami. And actually, this is probably the biggest septic system area in Miami. So actually, this area doesn't even really have any pipes yet. So they're installing the pipes. And I've seen the pipes they're installing. They're very big, wide flow pipes, so they should have room for tons of capacity. As far as the existing sewers go, I'm sure they're probably, because they're planning on hooking up thousands and thousands of homes, so they're going to have to definitely increase the capacity of these sewers. So I'm hoping they're going to go through and put in newer, bigger pipes and revamp the whole system, because it needs to be done. But also, I think these numbers may be also referring to like house sewer lines, so like a sewer line for a specific house, because that is something that has to get replaced every couple of years. And nowadays, I believe the longest lasting one would be those copper lines that run through your house. Those can last about 60 to 80 years. But as comparing like a sewer system to the lifespan of a sewer system to the lifespan of a septic tank, I think in the long run, it would be worth to go with the sewer system, because the septic tank is also going to need to be replaced too. But in the case of a septic tank, it would be the responsibility of the homeowner, compared to if it was a pipe break in the city sewer line, it would be the responsibility of the city. So,
Thank you. Also, like concerning that kind of, wouldn't connecting more houses cause like an increased stress on the already damaged sewer systems?
yeah, and that's why I think the renovation of the existing sewer is going to be vital as well, to hooking other houses up as well. I know 40 years from now, the projected sea level rise is going to be about conservative estimates about 2 feet of sea level rise. So here in Miami-Dade County, We are already pretty much right on the water table as it is. The groundwater is very high. We have very low above the sea level, so there's not much leeway there. So in 40 years, actually in just 20 years, by 2040, the sea level rise is expected to be 1 foot, and they're estimating about 60% of the existing septic tanks in Miami-Dade County within, at that time, with just 1 foot of sea level rise, 60% of them are at risk of failing or being compromised. So I think it's going to be expensive, but it's necessary, and I think we have a duty to get these replaced.
Thank you.
So I was also part of the environmental debate, as Mauricio mentioned, and just some things that I thought were interesting about the debate. When they talked about septic tanks, one of the main things that was brought up as an argument was the choice of the homeowner to have that right to have the septic tank. And the sewage systems, they were talking about the legalities of the street side and the home side. So let's say sometimes these damages that happen to the
The line.
yeah. It could be either the homeowner's fault and they would have to pay for it, or the street side. But one of the things that I saw that wasn't mentioned was how the COVID-19 pandemic has affected this issue, if it has.
Right. So I think the impact of COVID on this whole situation is kind of generic for how COVID's impacted so many other situations. It's made people, more frugal with their money. They maybe don't have, the resources to commit to these kinds of things. And I think that this is also like an area that Miami-Dade County has been really proactive and really transparent about, which I think is another positive thing about this whole program. And they're not hiding the fact that this is going to be expensive. They come out and say, this is probably going to be upwards of $3 billion project over the long haul. And so they're addressing the issues. They know it's COVID times. People, are struggling more now than normally they probably ever have in their life with funds and things like that. So I think they've been very proactive about going out and securing grants. They got, I believe, like a $4 million grant from the Florida Department of Education to help bridge the gap that homeowners are going to have to, come up with this money. In some cases, I read it, the average cost to transition is about $10,000 to $15,000, which is expensive. But Miami-Dade County is coming up with solutions to help the homeowner, relieve the burden on them to come up with this money. And Miami-Dade County is covering the pipes. The only thing that the homeowner would be responsible for is connecting the house all the way up to the end of the property line to the pipe. So Miami-Dade County will cover everything up to the property line. Then it'll be the homeowner's job to connect it to the pipe. So once the pipe's accessible, I don't see any reason why people shouldn't be willing to go out and connect the pipe, because it's not like a septic tank's going to last forever anyway. You're going to have to buy new septic tanks every about 40 years or so. So it's an investment, but I think in the long run, in terms of money that you're saving from not having to keep buying new septic tanks, as well as the positive impact it will have on our environment, I think those far outweigh the cost. So Miami-Dade County said they're prepared to spend a couple $1 million in the near future, coming months, just to help. I think it was 6,000 to 9,000 high-risk homes on the bay. They're going to try and attack those first. They're going to help out as much as they can. And I think that's important. It's important that they've been transparent about it, so people know it's going to be expensive. And I think now we just have the responsibility to mandate these things and say, because there are still septic tanks being installed today, right now. You can go to some of these new developments, and they're still installing septic tanks, despite all this facts and information, sea level rise. All this stuff is very imminent, it's very real, and I just think we have a not us, our lawmakers now hold a responsibility to mandate these changes and say, it is expensive, and maybe we have to build this pipeline in these areas that don't have it, but it's worth it to go ahead and do that now, instead of spend the money to put in a septic tank now, and then 20 years from now, you're going to have to take it out anyway and just end up going with the sewer regardless. So I say might as well get it out of the way now, bite the bullet now, and you'll benefit from it later.
I would have to agree with you on that. And also, one of the main things that was brought up in the debate as well was the cost issues, as you mentioned. And a lot of people mentioned, when you have these septic tanks, to maintain that is an insane amount of money,
right,
as compared to just using the sewage system. But a good question, I think, to bring up for people, especially who are new to this topic and aren't very familiar with it, is just how the environmental impacts on connecting homes to sewers are.
It's a huge environmental impact. So if you think about it, a septic tank is essentially just a cardboard, I mean, not cardboard, sorry, a concrete box that goes underneath your house. You're going to dig this big old hole and put this concrete box under your house. And, you know, septic tanks are not new research by any means. I mean, septic tanks have been around since, I think, the 20s. So there have been, you know, new technologies surrounding them, helping them filter out more of the waste, because really what we're worried about is, first of all, E. coli is a very big issue. We don't want E. coli getting into our groundwater and things like that. So it's going to filter out things like that. But also it's trying to minimize the amount of nitrogen is a big one. Nitrogen loading is basically what's causing algal blooms and fish kills in our bay. So the problem is, so the septic tank can only take out so much of the organic nutrients in these systems. So then it's supposed to pump down this wastewater into the unsaturated soil below. And unsaturated means that soil hasn't come into contact with the groundwater beneath. So basically the idea is that with the septic tank filtering up about 40 to 60% of the nutrients, and then it pumping down wastewater down into the unsaturated soil, the recommendation is about 2 feet of unsaturated soil, which is very hard to come across in Miami-Dade County. Initially, septic tanks, they thought about 1 foot of unsaturated soil, but new technology, new research, now it's recommended 2 feet, which is very hard to come across here in Miami. So when we're talking about septic tanks being failing or compromised, the failing system is a septic tank that is literally sitting in groundwater. So a lot of these people, and in the case of around here, actually in Hialeah, you have people who, when the rains come and the aquifer levels rise, the groundwater level rises, they can't even flush their toilets. They can't turn their sinks on because there's no pressure in that system to help force that water out. So these septic tanks fail, and they're literally just, I mean, that wastewater is going directly into our aquifer, and it hasn't had the chance to get filtered out by that unsaturated soil. And in the case of a compromised system, that's a system that has less than 2 feet of unsaturated soil beneath it. So it's still filtering out, but it's not filtering out as much as it needs to be environmentally friendly. And as we know, all basically waterways and all like storm drains and things basically lead to our major bodies of water, our bays, our rivers, our lakes. And you know, these are huge sources of income for us. They boost our economy. And I mean, we eat from it. We fish in there. We have recreation. I mean, everyone loves the beach that I've ever met. So it's our duty to protect it, not only for economy, but for future generations as well. So I think the environmental impact surrounding switching to sewers is huge. And I pray that more people can come to realize that in the coming years. Because like I said, with just a 1 foot level sea level rise here in Miami-Dade County, we've got a whole hundreds of thousands of homes that are going to be at risk of failing septic systems. And trust me, I've seen a failed septic system working with Hialeah Lake. I mean, not Hialeah Lakes. Working with Arcola Lakes recently. We went out there, and it was during the rainy season. We just had got a lot of rain. Not to disgust any listeners at home, but I mean, we live in probably the most popular city in modern America. We're a first world country, and there's human excrement on the streets because there are failed septic tanks. So, I mean, the negatives are far outweighed by the potential positives. So it is expensive, but I mean, I've studied abroad in Madagascar in my time at UF, and even they had that situation under control. So if we have human excrement on the streets in Miami, Florida, there's a pretty big problem there, I think. So.
Okay, so you mentioned earlier the algae blooms which come from nitrogen loading from failed septic systems. And I know Florida has a really common problem with red tide, which is a result of the specific algae Carenia brevis. So I'm not sure if you have any insight on that, or if you have any like numbers of the difference between septic and sewage when it comes to that algae.
So actually, Carenia brevis isn't the only algae that we have to worry about. It is the source of red tide, and the reason why that one's so scary is because unlike some other algae that bloom when nitrogen is getting loaded into these bodies of water, is the red tide produces a toxin as like a byproduct of it going through its life cycle, doing photosynthesis, things like that. It produces a toxin that kills the fish. and that's a huge problem. But luckily, I think red tide has been in Miami before, or at least very close to Miami. It can exist on the Atlantic coast. Yeah, the Atlantic coast. But mostly it's more generally recognized on the Gulf Coast. So like Southwest Florida, all those areas have problems with it. We've seen it once or twice, but I mean, the issues that are present in Miami from algal blooming and nutrient loading are going to be basically the same, minus the toxin. So all these nutrients and things like that are in our wastewater, they're all water soluble, which, I mean, if you, like a packet of Kool-Aid, you pour a packet of Kool-Aid in a glass of water and it dissolves and stirs up and gets, disseminated throughout that water. It's basically the same deal with these nutrients. They're washing out into this water, there's dissolving into this water, which then is carried out into our major bodies of water. And these nutrients are water soluble, which means when they get into this water, they bond with the free oxygen. And so everyone knows a molecule of water is H2O. So when it's bonding with this free oxygen, basically it's just taking up all the oxygen in that water. So now the fish don't have any oxygen to breathe in that water and they start dying. And that's why we see fish kills. So it's directly related to our nitrogen pumping because, I mean, if you look at grass, I mean, grass is essentially a nitrogen fiend. So that's why we tell people not to wash their grass clippings down the drain because it's basically the same as washing your wastewater out into the bay. So we recommend people try to reduce their pollutant loading as much as possible. And I think another environmental impact also is like a health scale. When I was talking about the failed septic systems in Arcola lakes, another cool thing about the sewer system is if there was a sewer system failure, there's a very, very small chance it'll be on your property. It may be near your property, maybe a sewer line breaks, a main sewer line, but for the most part, if the sewer line breaks, there's a good chance it's not going to be on your property. Whereas if your septic tank fails, it's going to be right there in your backyard. So that's another, I think, benefit to the homeowner of going with the sewer system as well. So, but as far as the Cape Brevis goes, it's generally like later in the year, early fall. It's kind of on the coast of Clearwater to Sanibel Island on the Gulf Coast. We have seen it on the Atlantic coast, but more up towards like the North Carolina side, not really down towards Miami. We have seen it close before, I think in like 2018, but luckily it hasn't decimated our bay that badly yet. So,
Well, Dalton, you do mention that if a septic system fails, it would be up to the homeowner's fault and what it may be. But in my debate, at least, a big argument towards septic systems was, right, it was the homeowner who would be able to maintain it, take care of it. If they weren't irresponsible, it failed or whatever, and if they were responsible, they'd be able to keep it for its lifespan. Versus sewers, which are communal resources. So this is the argument here is like they argue that the homeowner should have that right to choose because, right, you're connecting it to the sewer system, which is up to whether or not the whole community can be responsible as a whole, and maybe some people are just not comfortable with that. So what do you have to say?
I think with that argument, I think I have to come back with the pros and cons. When you're weighing the pros and cons, I think the pros of switching to sewers will always outweigh the cons of switching to sewers. So yes, it is expensive, and it probably is going to be the homeowner's responsibility to convert and to pay for failures that may happen on their property. But I mean, in the long term, you got to look at the big picture. I mean, sea level rise is a thing. It's happening. There's no doubt to it. Conservative estimates 2 feet in 20 to 40 years. So 2 feet in 20 to 40 years and is going to put over 60% of Miami-Dade's septic tanks in jeopardy. So why are we going to keep installing more septic tanks when this is already an issue is my argument. Because yes, it's expensive, but you're going to spend more money switching to a septic tank that's then going to fail in 20 years, and you're just going to have to go with the sewer system anyway. So it is expensive, but I think it's necessary, and especially with like the ground level rising. I mean, we have the aquifer right beneath our feet. It gives us drinking water. It feeds into all our major bodies of water. So we have a duty to protect the aquifer. And the bottom line is septic tanks are compromising the aquifer because, I mean, wastewater is being almost directly pumped into there from all the septic tanks we have and stuff. So I mean, where I'm from, in Central Florida, we have a lot more. I think my dad drilled like a 30-foot hole to get down to the well. We're here in Miami. I mean, you can dig 3 feet down and you might be accessing groundwater. So there's just not enough room for it, in my opinion, to build a septic tank and have the recommended 2 feet unsaturated beneath it. I just don't think it's possible.
To quickly follow up then, are there any areas in Florida where yes, it's fine, there are those kinds of areas? For example, I want to also bring up as well, you mentioned septic systems which are failing, damaged, compromised, as well as this closing groundwater gap between the septic system and the reservoir. If these sort of issues are not alarming in a sort of portion of Florida, then maybe is there still an urgency? Maybe not necessarily an urgency, but is there still a desire to switch to sewer if where maybe this is an area where it's fine?
And this is an area where I think it kind of comes down to a local scale. We're blessed here in Miami-Dade County to have a great government. We got great services, so we got the money for these kinds of things, you know. So I say if we have the money for it and it's a need, there's no doubt that it's a need, it's a necessity. So I think we're blessed to have that option. Whereas maybe where I'm from, there's not as much money. You're a little bit more above sea level. You could probably get away with a septic tank. And my dad, he's in Bellevue, Florida. He's had septic systems for as long as I've been alive. So they do serve a purpose. And I mean, there are new technologies coming out every year surrounding these septic tanks, new methods of how they filter out the waste and things like that. So they're getting more efficient. I just think in the case of Miami-Dade County, it needs to be, you know, scrapped because they're going to fail. I mean, that's just the bottom line. They're going to fail. They're going to sit in that water and they're going to fail. So there's just no way for Miami-Dade County, I think, in my personal opinion, that we can continue having a functioning septic system and not be concerned about the fire. Thank you.
All right, to piggyback off of the money situation, saying we do have enough money. Have you heard that our governor will be giving $100 million for homeowners who need help switching to sewer systems?
Yeah, and that's awesome. And that's partially being funded by that grant I was talking about from the Florida Department of Environmental Protection. And actually, I think the figure is 200. They're prepared to spend almost $250 million to help this transition, which is honestly only a fraction. I think it's like 1/16 of the projected $3 billion cost. But I mean, I'm sure when this gets going and they start seeing the positive effect of this. I mean, I've only been in Miami-Dade County for a little over a year now. And I mean, my first time ever going out on the bay, I was sitting in kind of like the transitional area between brackish water and where it turns into the sea. And I was sitting there for like 30 minutes and I think I saw 10 fish wash up dead just in that little span of time. And that's from fish kills. So, I mean, this is like a current problem. So, you know, it's a huge responsibility. So I think as this project gets going and they start seeing the positive effects, maybe there's not a fish kill one year in Miami-Dade County, maybe there's not algal blooms, and they'll be like, I wonder where that came from. Well, they did just switch over all these septic tanks to sewer systems. I mean, we've got millions and millions of people here. I think like over 3 million now, 4 million people. And it was one of the only places in the world where the population increased during COVID, which is crazy. And I was one of them. I moved down here during COVID. So, I mean, the stress on the situation is going to get worse and worse. So we need to start being proactive about coming up with a solution now. So maybe as this thing gets kicked off, other programs and grants and funds and hedge funds and things like that, they'll see the success we've had and either implement this program in their own cities or possibly donate to help us continue with it. Maybe we can get a federal grant here in the near future. So I mean, we got a state grant, but maybe we can get something federal. Get the big guys behind this and get them backing us. So I think there's a lot of potential for more funds to come in on top of the funds that we've already promised. So that's good because we're in COVID right now. So I know I wouldn't be able to pay $10,000 right now if I needed my house converted. So I would definitely be looking out for that stimulus, I guess you could say.
With that in mind, with these sort of systems in Miami-Dade and whatnot currently failing, this article you gave us did mention that this infrastructure, the sewer infrastructure, of course, is going to take time to plan.
Yeah,
build out.
yeah.
What can be done now with these failing septic systems and whatnot that can help this issue of small?
And I think what can be done now is kind of what I do every day, and that's just educate people, let them know that these issues are real. And sometimes you need to back those issues up with evidence, like say, hey, we've been loading our bodies of water with nitrogen and all kinds of nasty things. And these are the direct correlating effects due to that. And then once people see the evidence behind it, they get educated, they see the difference between sewer and septic, and it's kind of about erasing that $10,000 mark in their head, because all the homeowners thinking is, man, I got to spend $10,000 for this. But you put it in perspective, hey, you're going to have to replace that septic tank every 20 years anyway. The dangers that it's going to present to your environment, as well as if it breaks on your property, I mean, you're going to have standing human waste on your property. So there's a few good arguments that I think will help tip people more towards the side of switching to sewers, and I think that's important. Is educating people and just making sure they're aware of the problems. Because I mean, there's still people out there who argue against global warming, which I don't know how you can still argue against global warming with all the evidence behind it. But I mean, there's always going to be the naysayers, and usually it's all about this, right? Because money makes the world go round. So it's about educating those people. Sometimes you got to be the bigger man and stand up to maybe a giant, and maybe it'll make you uncomfortable, but these are things that need to be done. And like in the case of contractors and developers, they're just trying to save money. So they're not going to switch to sewer when they can just save a little money and install a septic tank. Because I mean, they're not going to be the ones replacing it in 20 years. They're trying to get it built, get the code passed, so they can get it through with the city and start selling those properties. So they don't care. So it's our job, and it's our lawmakers' job to make it mandatory, but it's our job to pester those lawmakers, because I mean, it works. Because getting out there and getting petitions signed, lobbying, these things work, and it's getting, not only is it getting your voice heard, but it's speaking for the things that can't speak for themselves, like manatees, things like that. I love manatees, and actually this year in Florida, we saw a record-breaking number of manatee deaths. I think like 70% or something like that. Mature manatees died this year, and guess what they died from? Starvation. There's so much algae in the waters, and the waters they need. They eat a lot of grass. They're called sea cows for a reason. There's so much algae that the seagrass can't grow. It's taking up all the sunlight, because algae is just like a plant. It needs the same basic building blocks of life: water, sun, energy, things like that. It's going to do photosynthesis, all these kinds of cool things that a plant would do. So it's literally stealing the sun energy from the seagrass that the manatees need to eat, and they're dying of starvation, manatees. So people think, oh, this is an isolated problem to like the Arctic, polar bears can't find food. This is right here in our backyard. They can't find food right here in our backyard. So it's just really sad.
All right, Dalton, for those people who didn't see our last podcast, can you please tell us about what you do, what's your profession, where'd you get your education from?
Of course. So I work at the University of Florida Institute of Food and Agricultural Sciences, UF-IFAS, and I work in the extension department. So basically, it's my job to take this research that's coming out from different areas around University of Florida, whether it be agricultural, something related to diet, nutrition, all kinds of things related to agriculture and human lifestyle, living healthy, anything basically related to agriculture, foods, and sciences, pretty much under the sun, we research it. And it's our job to take this research and extend it to the community. So the extension literally extends the research. I lead a program. I'm a supervisor of a program called the Urban Horticultural Program. So we work mostly with homeowners, helping conserve our water resources. Part of our program is under the banner of Florida Friendly Landscaping. So that's a program here in throughout all the state of Florida, which basically just presents alternative landscaping practices that use less water, put less stress on the plant, so you don't have to do as much fertilizer, things like that, because fertilizers wash off into the bodies of water just like our waste does. You're loading nutrients, and if your plants don't need those nutrients, like people just blindly apply fertilizers. Maybe they have a deficiency in their yard. They think it's a pest. They don't even know what the problem is. They're just going to apply pesticides and fertilizers. Well, hey, guess what? if that plant doesn't need those nutrients that you're putting in there in the fertilizer, or that pest may not even be existing, whatever you think the problem may be, those things are going to wash off right into our bodies of water. Toxins, excess nutrients, and they go straight out into the bay. We have the Biscayne Aquifer here, which is right underneath our feet, goes straight out into the Biscayne Bay. And it's literally the source of these problems. There's two kinds of pollution. There's point source pollution, which is, you can point at that source of pollution and say that's a big source of pollution, like a gas pipe breaking or something. You know how they had that? Yeah, like BP spilled a whole bunch of oil in the ocean. That's point source pollution. Non-point source pollution would be like the village of Palmetto Bay, right? They're all fertilizing and doing stuff on their lawns. And it's maybe not one particular lawn. It's the culmination of all those lawns. You can't point at one specific lawn, but you can say that this area is contributing to pollution because of all their runoff and things like that are getting out into the bay. So my program, the Florida Friendly Landscaping Program that we oversee here in Miami-Dade County, is all about protecting our water by reducing pollutant loading, educating homeowners about more Florida-friendly landscaping practices, giving them native plants that need less they don't even need fertilizer, they don't need to be watered, because another problem we have is people going and turning on the hose or flicking their irrigation system on when it's already raining outside, just wasting water. So another thing we do is help retrofit people's irrigation systems, make them use less water. And we do all kinds of really cool things throughout the state, throughout the county. It's basically dealing with mostly homeowners, making sure they're educated, staying up to date with new environmental like technology and things like that coming out. And also, my favorite part of my job is I do like diagnostics. So my background is in plant diagnostics, insect diseases, things like that. I just recently graduated from the University of Florida at the end of 2018 with a degree in botanical research. So my family never had a lot of money, so I had to work like 3 jobs to put myself through school. And I chose to try and find jobs that were in my field so I can get some experience before, graduating, stuff like that. So I worked at various green industry jobs, some of them on campus, because I was thinking about doing a master's degree. I still am. But I worked in the plant diagnostic clinic, and I worked in I was like the head landscaper for the art museum on campus, the Harn Museum of Art. So got some nice experience there, and got my feet wet with the laboratory setting as well as the field setting, pruning plants, trimming plants, as well as finding out what's wrong with plants. And that's what kind of really got my interest peaked, I guess, on the whole green industry side of things, and being more, I guess, just having a better knowledge base on, hey, I have a problem here. Maybe I should find out this leaf's turning yellow. Maybe I should find out what's going on before I just randomly dump fertilizer on it, start dumping water on it, dump some pesticide on it. Because many of the times, if you're doing these things without knowing what the issue is, it's just going to exacerbate the issue, make it even worse. So I always tell people, hey, these are all free services that we offer. I have a microscope right in my office. It'll take me 2 minutes to take if you have a brown patch in your grass, which is the thing I grew up sampling out, I was the grass specialist. So before people go dumping things on their grass, I can tell you what the problem is, and you can know exactly how to fight the problem, so you're not contributing to pollution in the environment. I know I get people all the time sending me pictures of the grass, and it's like, oh, my yard guy says it's a chinch bug, and I'm like, I can literally look directly at that grass and tell you that's like a fungal issue. So he's dumping pesticide on it, and the pesticide's just washing off and going. There's no chinch bug there. It's a fungal disease, and it's because they're overwatering their lawn. They're watering their lawn in the middle of rainy season every single day of the week, even though in Miami-Dade County we have a 2-day watering restriction. So, you asked a question earlier about the responsibility of the homeowner. In my experience, you can't trust the homeowner to be responsible without educating them. So that's where we come in. We're making sure they're educated. And yeah, I think it's really important what we do. And I'm honestly honored to have the opportunity to do what I do and get to work with customers on a daily basis and help get them educated. I feel like I come home and I feel like I did good work for the day. So it makes me feel good.
All right, thank you so much for joining us here again, Dalton. Thank you to everyone listening to us here at Miami-Dade Senior High School. My name is Michael Prego.
My name is Elizabeth Alvarez.
My name is Mia Concepcion.
And again, I'm Mauricio Cuba. It was nice to talk to you, Dalton.
You guys as well. Thanks.
Thank
Have
you
a
very
wonderful
much.
day and have a wonderful week.
Good job.